I feel like we always have that friend that starts 0-2 and they're like, yeah, I'm going home in the next loss, and then they never lose until the end of the day, and you end up waiting for them. So looks like we have Lorenzo here. I recognize Lorenzo from the Italian community as well. So playing at home, we are here in Bologna. And what did Lorenzo bring this weekend?
Yeah, so Lorenzo is playing Jeskai Oculus. This is the new deck that people are spouting as the best deck in the field. This deck that is obviously trying to discard an abhorrent Oculus and then use Helping Hand to get it back, but also is really just a Prophet Eidetic Memory deck. At this point, the deck is playing 4 copies of this card, alongside the 6 1-drops, Marauding Mako, and 2 copies of Spyglass Siren. And so many ways to draw extra cards. Steamcore Scholar, Terza Light Shatter, Fear of Missing Out. And the deck is just not really that reliant on the Oculus card anymore. Even also has the new Harmonized card from the new set, Glacial Dragon Hunt and Winter Night Stories, which are perfect cards to discard and then bring back later with your huge creatures that are buffed up by Proft, or being Marauding Mako or the Oculus. So many big creatures here to get back your Harmonized cards for cheap. And up here is he against Mick Masson, who is Danish. He's from Copenhagen.
Oh, nice.
He's usually the type of player who just like owns a bunch of stuff, typically a bunch of foiled out decks, and helps out me and Chris Larson for the Pro Tours whenever we are in need of cards. So yeah, huge shout out to Mick here, starting out 2-0 with mono white tokens.
I love this deck. I have to say, Elspeth Stormslayer might be one of my favorite cards from Tarkir. So I'm excited to see a lot of tokens into action. This deck, which also is a very interesting choice for the weekend. Why do you think Mick decided to bring it here?
Part of it might just be like familiarity, right? Like standard format is pretty huge. There's a lot of intricacies in how you play, and you can play your deck for quite a while. And so just playing decks you're familiar with might have a huge advantage.
Mako already?
Yeah, here we see the Mako develop already. Another reason is that the mono white deck is another temporary lockdown deck, and we have talked about how lockdown is just so well positioned in the current metagame here. So yeah, this mono white deck built around Caretaker's Talent. Whenever a token comes into play, you draw a card, and that's such a strong engine with all these token makers, like of course the Bezas, the Overlord of the Mistmoors, Elspeth, and even the beautiful Carrot Cakes that we see come into play right here. Very unassuming card, but in this deck, once you have your Caretaker's Talent down, it just draws you 2 cards, makes 2 1/1s, gains you 3 life, scries 2. It's amazing. Lorenzo here also starting out with his best card in the Prophet Eidetic Memory. This card it's like up the beanstalk. It just comes into play and draws a card, only costs 2 mana, and then it sits there and gives you an advantage as the game goes on. In this case, instead of like Beanstalk drawing more cards, it lets Lorenzo boost up his creatures to huge sizes. And Nick having the Caretaker's Talent here, these decks are firing on all cylinders here, and we're gonna be in for a fireworks show here, as it's gonna be raining with +1 counters and rabbits and everything else good under the sun.
A lot of card draw. I love Caretaker's Talent. Very interesting card, and yeah, excited to see how this deck performs this weekend against what might be one of the best decks in the format, Jeskai Oculus. I mean, at least doing pretty well overall, and gain some new toys, as Maria was saying in the meta breakdown, with the addition of Tarkir Dragonstorm.
Yeah, the Harmonized cards especially having an impact here. I wonder what Mick's game plan is for dealing with this Prophet Eidetic Memory. He does have Get Lost in hand, so you might just like have to just soak it up and
draw a card
and kill your and kill, like, use Get Lost on that memory. I think actually he doesn't have that many more cards in hand. On the other hand, you could try and contain Lorenzo's creatures a little bit with your other cards. And since Mick is a little bit flooded here, I mean, I think he has the Get Lost and a secret card that he does not want to show us at the moment. It does have this Fountain Port, which is an engine especially with Sunken Citadel that you keep generating fish tokens and drawing cards of this Caretaker's Talent. Lorenzo here having just the next step of the perfect start here. The Steamcore Scholar. This weird detective is actually quite a strong card here. Drawing 2 and either discarding 2 or even sometimes discarding an instant, a sorcery, or a creature with flying. Actually decides to discard a land and a creature with flying. which, I mean, I don't think there's a reason to the reason to discard the land here is that then you buff up the Marauding Mako, giving it an extra counter, and then the Eid's Prophetic Memory comes in here, and a Prop's Eidetic Memory, always get it wrong, comes in here, puts 2 more counters on that Mako, and this is a 6/6. This is a 6/6
Oh wow, for 1 mana.
attacking on turn 3, yes.
I mean, this is not a great position for Mick Madsen to be. I have to say, this Jeskai Oculus deck is really surprising, and that Mako really strong very early on the game.
Oh, that's a Day of Judgment in Mick's hand, and Mick saying, I am flooded enough that I think actually Mick's plan here is to use that Get Lost on the Prop's Eidetic Memory. I got it right this time. To use it on that, like, before it gets to put counters on anything for Lorenzo. Lorenzo maybe is going to extend more to the board here, and then Mick can untap and just slam this Day of Judgment and be in control of the game from that point.
I love the patience here.
Yes, absolutely. Like this is a plan, a multi-turn plan that is unfolding before our eyes here. The biggest question or concern here is actually Mick's life total at the moment. Taking 6 from that Mako instead of jump blocking with that Rabbit does have some costs here, especially as Lorenzo can maybe with a second Proft can start to put counters onto that Scholar, which will make it not able to be blocked by this Rabbit token. See Lorenzo with the new card, Terza Light Shatter. So this is a very similar card to Steamcall Scholar. And Mick is just going to clear off this Proft just right now when there's no...
Before the counters.
Well, so the counters only come at the beginning of combat, so you could like let Lorenzo draw the cards and then still kill it. But there are 2 copies of Spell Pierce in Lorenzo's deck, so by doing it this way, you just like at least protect yourself from, I don't know, Lorenzo drawing into an island and a second Spell Pierce.
Mick can crack the Carrot's Cake, gain some life, make another blocker, draw a card from Caretaker's Talent, so there's some options to still get some card advantage, and then with the board wipe, so...
Right, and also remember that Terza has this triggered ability whenever you attack and there are not that many, and when there's 7 cards in the graveyard, yeah, you do get an advantage here. So Lorenzo just gonna go ahead and use a map on the Steamcall Scholar, maybe. Oh, right, there is actually a trigger ability from the Mako there. That should happen after the Terza has drawn cards. So it was almost too late. Like if Lorenzo takes a full action after those triggers should have resolved, well, the way the trigger rules work is that if there's a trigger that you should have done something that affected the board, like putting counters on the Mako, and you do another action afterwards that you can't do with the triggers on the stack, such as cracking a map, that's a sorcery-only ability, then the triggers will count as being missed, because it is Lorenzo's responsibility to keep track of those triggers. To be fair, I don't think it matters too much in this specific game state, because, well, the Rabbit token can just block anyways, and I do believe he will get the counters, because he kind of like stopped himself mid-action.
Yeah, it looks like they're putting some counters here, so that Mako now with 7 counters on it. And Lorenzo still has 1 mana available, using it to crack the map on the Scholar, getting... Ooh,
so you could just put that right in the graveyard here.
Yeah, you can
and get a little bit of kind of extra value. I mean, you also like don't get the opportunity to use the front side of it, so it's not really extra value. You just like get to draw a different card than the Glacial Dragon Hunt.
Looks like Lorenzo here considering whether that card goes into the graveyard, and it does.
So I think here Mick might just want to make another Rabbit, chump block the 2 the 2 creatures, ground creatures here, and gain 3 life. So essentially staying at 12 life. Also drawing a card from the Caretaker's Talent, and then it's going to untap and slam that Day of Judgment. And now the question is, can Mick find answers for Lorenzo's follow-up here? The Prop's Eidetic Memory has been taken care of. The and you know, and there is this, I see an Elspeth being drawn, and there's still this caretaker's talent in play to provide Mick with more card draw as the game goes longer. But Lorenzo has this one window here next turn to try and develop something big onto the board that Mick might not be able to answer in time, but that's a temporary lockdown picked up as well. Like you definitely still want to use your Day of Judgment on this turn here, clearing up those 3-cost creatures, but next turn, if Lorenzo's follow-up is something like Fear of Missing Out and Marauding Mako, well, then you can actually take advantage of that lockdown to clear out the board again.
So let's see what Lorenzo can do here to follow up that board wipe. 3 mana.
Is that just an Oculus cast?
Yeah,
yes.
like it is. Let's exile 6 cards from the graveyard.
Plenty of cards in the graveyard here for Lorenzo.
And Oculus is such a strong card.
It seems like Lorenzo really has to decide which card you leave in the graveyard. This matters both for drawing the next copy of Tertia and for having a bit more... it also matters for Delirium, of course, for the Fear of Missing Out. So deciding to leave the enchantment in the graveyard, that's usually the hardest card type to get in there. And now using the map token on this Oculus, helping hand on top saying...
That's a good one.
Well, kinda. You have to put it in the graveyard, though, because of the manifest trigger from Oculus. So you don't actually get to draw the card. And essentially, Lorenzo was just increasing the odds of hitting a creature with that manifest. So yeah, now the Elspeth not looking that good on this board, and this lockdown not looking that good. Oculus looking incredibly good at a 6/6 against Mick's 12 points of life.
Let's see what Mick decides to do here. Playing a land, tapping 5 mana, and it's Elspeth time.
Yeah, so the good thing about playing Elspeth here is that she just dies. But
is that it? That's the good thing? That's the bad one then?
That's the upside. But she does make tokens to draw your cards, and she does soak up the damage, so you have a bit more time. And so essentially what Mick is saying here is that it's kind of like a time walk effect, right? You do get to you do get to buy just a little bit of extra time. I actually wonder if he has... Right, he also has the opportunity to go -3, destroy target creature with mana value of 3 or greater. I did forget that part of Elspeth. So can just use it as a removal spell for the Oculus here, getting it out of the way, and obviously also letting your Elspeth die to the manifest token, but at least clearing off this issue. Or you can plus it here, draw a card, also not take damage from the Oculus, because that one will have to go and kill the Elspeth rather than go face. But then you need to find some other answer to this Oculus, and it's not like your deck is chock full of answers. So it's kind of a difficult scenario. Of course, these tokens also can matter. You can use your Caretaker's Talent to make copies of them later to draw another card at some other point when you need to. So it's this is setting up Mick in a bit of a better spot to keep some more card flow going, but you are banking on finding other ways to clear that Oculus.
One thing that I really like about these Jeskai Oculus is that it's a bit less graveyard dependent than previous versions that we saw with Azorius.
Yeah, much less actually. What Lorenzo can do is just shave a couple of copies of Oculus, shave a couple of copies of Helping Hand, and just be an aggro deck with all of these card draw and discard effects. Oh, and here we see once again the Glacial Dragon Hunt here from the map token from the... Whoa, that is the second Oculus. So, wow, that Helping Hand being put into the graveyard was actually huge, and that's an attack for 12. So Mick getting severely punished for that decision on the Elspeth to not kill the Oculus. Of course, would have still been in a lot of trouble regardless. But yeah, that's... the Oculus being the second Oculus being the third card down. So actually the map token, putting Helping Hand in the graveyard, was huge there.
That's the thing with Get Lost. You also help your opponent a little bit. Now, let's see the answers in the sideboard. And as I was saying, Simon, I feel like this Jeskai is a bit more... equipped to deal with the post-sideboard graveyard hate, right? So what can the mono-white player here do against this Jeskai Oculus?
So you actually don't have that many answers outside of the 2 copies of Rest in Peace, which I think you're bringing in, but I'm not even sure they're actually good. They might even be bad. They do turn off the Delirium of Fear of Missing Out, and they do turn off the Harmonized card, so yeah, it's probably still worth bringing in, but I'm just saying that it's like not that great, and it makes your Enduring Innocence much more vulnerable. It makes your Caretaker's Talents, I guess they're not affected by it, right? They say whenever it's sacrificed, yeah, so those ones are good, but at least the Enduring Innocence are going to be affected by your own Rest in Pieces. You also have Boonbringer Valkyrie and Destroy Evil. I think Destroy Evil is probably the best cyber card you can have here because it takes care of the Proft as well as some creatures like Fear of Missing Out, but it also takes care of the big creatures like Oculus.
So very good options there. I mean, at least a couple of them. And on the other side, what do you think the Jeskai Oculus is going to bring against this mono white deck?
Yeah, so on the other side here, I think that we might be seeing the Chandras come in. This is a cyber plan we even saw at the Japanese Jeskai Oculus lists from the last Pro Tour, which actually, I mean, almost put 2 copies in the top 8. We had just Ken Yukihiro missing out on tiebreakers, Kenza Harane making top 8. They were playing 3 copies of Chandra Sparkrun, the new Chandra from Aether-Drift, as a way to deal with sweepers, because she just comes down and makes this vehicle that has haste, doesn't get swept up by Day of Judgment, and it's just going to continue to be a threat. Also, the 2 copies of Destroy Evil from Lorenzo are going to be important as ways to clear up Temporary Lockdown or Caretaker's Talon or Besa, whatever it is that you might need to deal with. There's also a Lauren and an Exercise in the sideboard as well for Lorenzo here. Exercise particularly good at exiling the Enduring Innocence.
Oh yeah, and Lauren can take care of Caretaker's Talent, for example. So there are a lot of options as well in both sideboards. This is open deck list, so they both know what each other might bring here. And yeah, just showing, we saw, this is our second match of the day, and we saw 4 different decks. I love to see that, a lot of variety in Standard right now. I'm also curious to see the Is It Prowess deck in action, I have to say.
You see a lot of variety, but we haven't even seen the most popular deck yet.
Because, you know why? I've seen this deck only play on Arena, but I want to see it in paper, because things are going to get very interesting with you creating all these longs, all these triggers happening. It's not an easy deck to play, or at least to keep track of everything that is going on.
I think in both ways. Like, it's obviously not that easy to keep track of the Prowess triggers, I should say, but also not that easy to play a deck that has so many 1-cost spells that you sometimes might not even want to play every 1-cost spell you have. Like, because you might want to hold them to be a Prowess trigger on a certain later turn, or to trigger your Corey Steel Cutters. And the question of like whether to, use your burn spells as ways to deal with creatures and like buy you some time to resolve the stock ups, or when you need to use them to hit the opponent in the face and try to deal damage. It's like quite a flexible deck, and usually that leads to pretty challenging play patterns.
And as we get ready for game 2 here of this round 3, let us know where you are watching from, because I'm always curious to know where people are watching. Do you know that they're watching not only on Twitch, but YouTube as well, Simon?
Yeah, shout out to the YouTube viewers. Can you just give us a big woo wherever you're seated? I know we can't hear you, but the people sharing the room with you can certainly hear it.
Good one, Simon. Let us know where you're watching. We see a lot of different places from all around the world, and I gotta say, I love that. Thank you for spending your Saturday with us, me and Simon, and then your other casting pairing that you didn't see yet, but will soon, is Arne and Martin Yuza.
Absolutely. I mean, I love spending a Saturday, with you and just our 2,000 closest friends.
It's a blast, and honestly, it's so sunny here in Bologna this weekend.
It really is. I am regretting that I'm wearing a blazer at this moment as we speak. But also as we speak, Lorenzo is drawing up an opening hand here, card by card, looking up to the sky, trying to remember how many cards you start with in your opening hand. But it is 7, and I think these players might be ready to start.
Yeah, so let's take a look as the action will start. They are deciding here, Mul and Keep look like Lorenzo mulled.
Never mind. We see a quick little mulligan from Lorenzo here. And yeah, let's keep talking about the, the stream.
You know, it's interesting because Mike here was on the play, so Lorenzo waited to first you tell me your decision on mulligan, and then I choose mine. Now, I want to ask you, Simon, if you ever changed your decision of mulligan based if your opponent mulliganed or not?
I think so, but it doesn't happen that often because the decision has to be quite close. And it's not even super clear which direction impacts it in which way. Like, are you supposed to mulligan a greedy hand if the opponent mulligans themselves or if they keep, right? Because if they are mulliganing and potentially going to 5, but you kept a greedy hand and you just lose anyway, like, maybe that's actually an incentive. If they're mulliganing, it might be incentive for you to mulligan as well. Or if they mulligan, they might have a slower hand, so it might actually be you might actually be incentivized to keep your greedy hand because your opponent's not going to put as much pressure on you. I think in general it tends to go in the first direction I mentioned, where actually if the opponent mulligans, that should incentivize you to mulligan more as well, because the card difference matters a little bit less. And mulligans doesn't necessarily mean that their draw is slow or dysfunctional. It just means that it doesn't have that much longevity, especially with the London mulligan. Like, you can mulligan to 5 and have a perfectly fine curve out as you would on 7. That doesn't actually change anything. What changes is how many cards you have left over after your curve out. And
we are starting here with a Spyglass Siren and creating a map immediately. On the other side, we see that Destroy Evil that entered post sideboard. There's also a Carrot's Taker that Carrot's Cake that Mike decided not to play.
Yeah, so I wonder if Mick is keeping up answers for a Proft here. Lorenzo not playing out that card. Maybe has a Spell Pierce here. This, smells a lot like Spell Pierce, especially using the map token after you play your land drop for turn. Normally, you would just drill a bit less info by using your island first, but the fact that he didn't do this should tell Mick that there is a Spell Pierce in Lorenzo's hand here, and Mick playing beautifully around that by developing not the Caretaker's Talent, but the Enduring Innocence, another card that has a very similar effect of drawing cards every time a little rabbit token comes into play.
I really like this card, very persistent on the board, but that Spyglass does have flying, so dealing 1 damage here with a Spyglass, playing land for the turn and passing.
I see also Disdainful Stroke, I think it is, in Lorenzo's hand. There's another card you can bring in here, countering Day of Judgment, countering Beza, countering Elspeth. Not actually that many, and also the White Overlord, of course. So there are quite a lot of targets in this white deck, but it doesn't deal with any of the card advantage engines. And we see Mick here again, developing a second Innocence here. Lorenzo's Disdainful Strokes, Lorenzo's Spell Pierce, completely blanked by this sequence from Mick. And these lifelink creatures aren't easy to race, but Lorenzo's going to go give it a try here with the Steamcore Scholar. Hopefully discarding just 1 card right now, maybe even discarding that Spell Pierce, discarding a second copy of Steamcore Scholar.
Because he does have flying, so Lorenzo discarding it there, playing a land, a Restless Anchorage.
That's another flyer added to this board. So this really is a lifelink versus flying dual deck here. As these Enduring Innocences are going to keep slamming in here. Lorenzo could block, but it's not a very good block here because the Innocence is just going to stay in play.
I really like Fountain Port.
And I love this here. Now that Lorenzo is tapped out, you can slam down this Overlord of the Mistmores, make 2 more flyers here, completely stopping Lorenzo's game plan of winning in the air and drawing you 2 more cards. Of course, the Enduring Innocences only trigger once each turn, so you don't draw 4 cards, but this is still
pretty good.
It's quite good indeed. And now there's even the extra clock of if Lorenzo is taking too long to break through this board, the Overlord is going to come off imp hand here.
I was going to say how good Fountain Port it is with the Enduring Innocence, but never mind, this is way better. And what a board here that Mick is able to develop.
I also want to highlight that Mick actually has a laydown arms that he could have used on the Steamcore Scholar, but decided not to. And we also see now why Lorenzo discarded his Steamcore Scholars to have a target for this helping hand. But yeah, Mick choosing to hold on to that laydown arms, waiting for a more scary threat than just a 2/2 flyer. Maybe an Oculus in the future, for instance. Lorenzo here not getting to discard just one card here, instead deciding to discard 2 fast lands, and now gets to develop this Proft. So now Lorenzo can actually start developing a board that is sizable enough. This Proft is going to put 3 counters on something.
Now it's
put it on your Vigilance flyer that can then attack through these insects. So now Mick is being rewarded for having this lay-down arms kept in hand, because now he can use it to pinpoint and target the big blocker here and attack for 8 back at Lorenzo, who's only at 14 life, remember.
Day of Judgment is the card that Mick does have access to. Now there's also the Carrot's Cake, some other options, the laydown arms as you said before.
Yeah, I assume what we want to play here is just a Carrot Cake, draw a couple more cards, and then play out that laydown arms. You could also play the laydown arms first in case of any weird double pierce shenanigans.
That does deal with that Scholar.
And yeah, now you can just attack with everything. And maybe you could also just rely on that fountain port here to just make a creature. You don't even need to play out the Carrot Cake from hand. Though, of course, if you do play out the Carrot Cake, you actually also have the mana to use your fountain port to sacrifice that rabbit token again. So yeah, Lorenzo's saying, yeah, I need to... I do go to 17 off that laydown arms, but... still is going to have to trade off with one of these insect tokens to not die too quickly here. Back down to 11. Mick up to 20 life here, not really getting raised even in the face of this Ice Prophetic Memory. And if he can keep having removal spell whenever Lorenzo goes to put a bunch of counters on a creature, he can keep attacking. And actually this mono-white control deck is turning into the aggro deck in this specific scenario here. A Beza picked up for Mick there.
I love it. There's also Destroy Evil in hand. That card is also very good against Lorenzo.
And just so beautiful. Lorenzo there with the Spell Pierce in hand, with Disdainful Stroke, just got stuck there by the way that Mick played the game. And yeah, that is the downside of having counterspells. That is the downside of telegraphing them too early, is that sometimes your opponent just gets to deploy their cards in a way that completely renders them useless.
Didn't even need Elspeth to win the game, just the tokens, card draw, and winning.
The Elspeth is certainly like not necessary to win the game, because the deck was also like quite good before Elspeth arrived. It's sometimes it can turn these games that are kind of like, you know, slow and dragged out. They'll just end instantly because of Elspeth.
Yeah.
So she does help a bit with the clock. But I mean, sometimes when the opponent doesn't have any good blockers, 2 power creatures are good enough to win the game.
True, and I have to say I was impressed here by this mono white token deck, and we are going to have a game 3 with Lorenzo now on the play. Now I do have to say this Lorenzo deck seems very interesting, because all your small flying creatures, certainly with the Profts, get so many counters and also become a big threat in the air.
Yes, specifically the Steamcost Scholar plus Proft combination, even just those 2 cards together, is a 4/4 flyer on turn 3. That's like Sarah Angel on turn 3.
Yeah.
And even drew you a card, right? So, at least if the Steamcost Scholar gets to discard a flyer on instant or sorcery, that is both card advantage and pressure in one neatly wrapped package.
Somebody asked Simon, what do you think about the blue-white artifact deck with the Bay and Synthesizer?
The blue-white artifact deck with Synthesizer. That deck is pretty cool. We actually did try to work on it for the last Pro Tour. There's a lot of like very cute combo stuff you can do with repurposing Bay. I think ultimately we decided that it just wasn't quite powerful enough, especially like in that format where you had to deal with the domain and the aggro decks. Right now, domain seems to have been pushed out of the format, and the metagame is much more aggressive. And so it might leave options for decks like this that are a little bit more targeted. Like what the blue-white deck does is that it's a little bit slow to get going, but once it gets going, it makes huge constructs very quickly. And a lot of these aggro decks aren't that well equipped to deal with big creatures in the mid-game, just like we saw with the Jeskai control deck, for instance. So it is possible that there is like a metagame opening for that deck. I don't particularly know about it. I think I wouldn't, you know, put a lot of I wouldn't put a lot of stock into like that being a good deck, but it could be.
It could be sometimes out of nowhere. I mean, sometimes we can see somebody do well with the deck here this weekend, so we'll definitely keep up an eye for these kind of decks that are not like the decks that we see the most in the meta breakdown, but also do some impact in standard. Now, I do have to say, Simon, we did have a ban and unban announcement recently, and standard was like, nothing is changing. What do you think here of the standard format? Do you agree with just seeing how Dark Hue Dragonstorm impacts the format? And I feel like impacted a bit more than Ether Drift, didn't it?
It definitely did. I mean, Ether Drift brought us like Stock Up and Riot's End, you know, not very impactful cards. Or like they are impactful cards, but like not, you know, very flashy cards, I would say. Whereas Takir, you know, especially with the Corey Steel card up, but also Terza, as we see here, the Glacial Dragon Hunt, the and like a lot of the like other cards that we see in other decks, like the, you know, creating the Jeskai control deck with Shiko, so we also already saw Rediscover the Way going into that deck too. There's a lot of like cards that impact these decks. Also the Pixie decks getting another Pixie with the Sun Pearl Kirin.
Oh, true. Yeah, a flying 2/1 with flash.
That even enables the Black-White Pixie deck to actually function now, because now you have 8 Pixies in that deck. So yeah, a lot of like pretty good like cards coming out there and impacting this huge standard format, which really is a testament to the power of this set, that it can have an impact even as the format grows to, I think, 11 sets or so at this point, maybe even more, maybe it's 15 actually.
It's getting difficult to keep track of, and there's a lot of different things that you can do in standard. Crater Roof Bohemian is legal, so I leave a challenge for somebody to make a deck work out of nowhere with that.
If we see a Crater Hoof on stream, I'll be back to playing with creatures.
Okay.
That's all it takes.
You're okay.
That's all it takes.
No longer Jeskai control player. I'll be back. I'll be an elf player now.
If I see someone winning with the Crater Hoof, well, it would be a Collector's Cage deck, I would assume.
Okay, that's true. That's true. So players here getting ready for this game number 3 with Lorenzo now on the play, taking the mulligan decisions. Let's see if this is a better hand. Lorenzo that already took a mulligan, I believe.
Drawing cards one by one here, keeping us in the suspense zone as we begin here game number 3.
Yeah, so let's take a look at what Lorenzo was able to pick up here. Putting one card on the bottom, there's an Oculus on top. I see that already. Land.
So not as aggressive of a start here without a 1-drop. And I do see an Oculus in hand. I wonder if there is a way to discard that one, or just decide to try to play it slow here. Towards the tower being, I don't know how many copies Lorenzo bought it out, if any, but dying to 2 Enduring Innocence's last game certainly will make him rethink whether or not that card should be included in the deck. And there's a Destroy Evil, so a very reactive hand from Lorenzo here. And I think Mick is quite happy to see that.
Yeah, so definitely more reactive here, not a lot of pressure in the beginning. As you said, Torch the Tower, very good against the Enduring Innocence that we saw take up game 1.
I see a Chandra in hand. I also see Helping Hand and Oculus. I think Lorenzo kept the hand on the back of that combination, if there is a way to discard that Oculus. But now Mick can just slam this Caretaker's Talon, and Lorenzo does have the answer in the Destroy Evil here, not in the counterspell, and is then hoping to draw 4th land to land that Chandra Spark Hunter and use that to take over the game. I don't know, Mick does have an answer to it in his Get Lost. So, well, there's not a land there for Lorenzo, just a Spell Pierce. And I think Lorenzo will just have to pass back here.
So let's see what Mick is able to do, getting a land there. Also ways to exile the graveyard.
So I wonder if Mick is going to go for the second Caretaker's Talent, seeing as the first one didn't get hit by a Spell Pierce. Clearly Lorenzo can't have a Spell Pierce in hand. But it turns out that he absolutely can, and does, because he drew that last turn. On the other hand, Mick can just pass with Kutzel's Flanker up, trying to protect a little bit from something like a, fear of missing out being drawn, discarding that Oculus, exiling the graveyard. But I think that would be, the rest in peace here being the play. And Lorenzo, sitting with that Oculus in hand, is priced into using that Spell Pierce, getting rid of the rest in peace, and draws a land here. So now Lorenzo's engine is online. Can play a Chandra, use the 0 ability, make a token, and attack for 3. Now the question is, do you even want to do that? Because you can also play the Chandra and plus it to discard your Oculus.
Oh yeah, that's
getting
right.
it into the graveyard. And if he does that, I think if Mick can draw a 5th land and do Get Lost on Chandra and then Kutzel's Flanker to exile the graveyard, that would be a huge blowout.
And looks like Mick reading here, Chandra. It's not a card that you see every day in Standard, but I love that this Jeskai Oculus is bringing back some Ether Drift cards. We saw the Mako as well, now the Chandra Spark Hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a deck that is, you know, at least utilizing some of these tools. I think that's part of why we saw it break out at the last Pro Tour with multiple teams playing the deck. It ended up being the 3rd most popular deck at the last Pro Tour. As a big surprise to our team, who hadn't realized that the deck was even playable. So that is something that often happens.
I wonder if we'll get some surprise like this weekend.
Absolutely. No, I think we will. I mean, like, essentially the standard format we've seen so far has been from the standard challenges. There's been no tournaments with this set, no big important tournaments. And what happens in the standard challenges is that people tend to copy the same decks that did well in last weekend's challenge or like yesterday's challenge and play it in this challenge. So it becomes this loop of the same decks showing up over and over again. And we're definitely seeing some of the good moves from this format here in that churn, such as the Chandra here. And Lorenzo not exposing his Oculus to graveyard hate here, not deciding to take up the Chandra, instead making a vehicle and forcing Mick to deal with his Chandra here.
Get Lost, dealing with the Chandra, creating 2 map tokens to Lorenzo. Lorenzo already with 3 cards in the graveyard.
There was another land drawn here, so actually Lorenzo still doesn't have any moves. Can't crew this vehicle now that Chandra is gone. Yeah, I really think that this tournament, like unlike the online tournaments, unlike the arena ladder, will showcase some innovation and some ways that this tournament, like this format, can move forward.
I hope so. I feel like there's always a deck of the weekend, and I'm excited to see what's that deck, what does end up making the top 8 of the regional championship. And we have Caretaker's Talent here for Mick Madsen.
Around Spell Pierce here, waiting until you have 2 mana left over, and Lorenzo just drawing another land here. Not very effective, and this super reactive hand is just not really serving him. Like before, he lost to Enduring Innocence when he had answers like Spell Pierce or Caretaker's Talent. Now, going to lose to the Caretaker's Talent potentially while having Torch the Tower in hand. But as I say that, Mick draws a Enduring Innocence and finally gives Lorenzo a target for this. But actually, if Mick wants to, he can use Get Lost on his own Enduring Innocence. If he does this, he'll also create a token and draw a card, and Enduring Innocence will go to the graveyard and come right back. So this is a beautiful play from Mick here. Making 2 map tokens, drawing a card, getting your Enduring Innocence down so that you're ready to draw cards later once you find that Fountain Port or those Carrot Cakes.
I love this play from Mick's side, and we have some card draw online. Now Lorenzo has 4 cards in the graveyard and 1 map token available.
Still doesn't have a target for the map tokens though, because this vehicle is not a creature. Neither is Prof, but let's see if we can draw something good here. And that is a Destroy Evil. That is not bad. You can take care of this Caretaker's Talent before it takes care of you. And that might just be what, you know, not exactly what Lorenzo wanted. I think he wanted a little bit more ability to do something good. But I think actually he's going to try and respond to a token maker and hold on to this Destroy Evil in case there is some other target you want to hit. Let's say that Mick plays another Enduring Innocence. You might actually want to kill the Innocence that is in play, denying the card draw that way. But yeah, Mick just doesn't have any token makers, so can try and level up this Caretaker's Talent, and this is the moment where you can use Destroy Evil. In response to the ability that levels up the Caretaker's Talent, you can kill it, and it will never level up, and thus never get the ability to copy one of your tokens. So yeah, this is the exact moment that Lorenzo decides to go for it. Essentially, what he got out of this is that he wasted one of Mick's mana. Mick doesn't really care about that part, but is happy to see the game continue to go long. Not too happy to lose one of his card draw engines.
Well, Simon, it seems like a very reactive game on both sides as well, as you were saying.
That's the subject of the hand that Lorenzo chose to keep. I think that was a mulligan to 6 potentially, but it did have the huge downside of not being able to put on pressure, and that leads into playing games that are going to look like this, which generally favor the mono-white decks. But since Mick hasn't actually managed to get his engine online, playing now a Kutza's flanker here, choosing the mode where you get to scry to and draw a card, right?
There are more modes? Wasn't this card just for exiling the graveyard?
It does so many things.
That's right. I mean, very flexible card. Also, nice body to have.
Gain 2 and scry 2, not drawing hard. But the scry 2 did find the caretaker's talent, the carrot cake here. And, you know, now this cake will bring along some bunny rabbits, bring along a second copy of Enduring Innocence here. And now the card draw engine is full and well online for Mick here. Playing that second Innocence. Doesn't get to draw a card off this, of course. But end of turn can crack the carrot cake on Lorenzo's turn, trigger these Innocences again, scry 1, draw 2 cards, and things are ticking up for Mick here. This is the engine that he was looking for. This is the punish for the reactive hand from Lorenzo that had some ways, like actually a lot of ways to contain card draw engines, but Mick just had too many card draw engines to really get got by this, and Lorenzo just has to play another land and has here. Of course, his draws have not been that great. I mean, he did keep a reactive hand, but hasn't seen a single creature in the entire game from all of his draw steps. So certainly not the perfect scenario here. And I think with the second carrot cake here, Mick is just flush with card draw here. Lorenzo can't even block with his vehicle because it cannot be crewed. There's the fountain port. That's even more creatures. And Lorenzo down to just 10 life here, actually going to die to this board state very soon. And Mick is just fueling up again, drawing even more cards. We love to see it. This mono-white deck, kind of forgotten, it faded into obscurity a little bit, but Mick is saying, no, this deck is still good. I know how to play it. I know all the tricks. I know to get lost my own Enduring Innocence in response to a charge to tower. And that is what propels him here to a excellent start here from the Danish player. I could not be more excited.
I mean, I'm really impressed by this deck. I'm not going to lie. Enduring Innocence, Caretaker's Talent, just creating an insane amount of value. Lorenzo is going to draw 2 cards here, discard a card.
I wonder if we spoke too soon. Steam Gold Scholar, drawing 2 cards, enabling the Proft, discarding Abhorrent Oculus, enabling the Helping Hand. Lorenzo now all of a sudden actually has a board state. Of course, Mick has a lot of removal spells, so that might not necessarily matter that much in this point. But it's at least a start. Oh, discarding Winter Night Stories. This is the card that lets you
draw 3 cards.
Let you draw 3 cards, and you can just harmonize that from the graveyard, crewing the vehicle, using the vehicle to harmonize this card, and drawing some more cards here. I'll just check what the Winter Night Story does.
Draw 2 cards, then you discard
2 unless you discard a creature card. That's how it works here. So Lorenzo might just be priced into, I think actually just going to discard the Helping Hand and just play out the Oculus potentially. Or maybe he's holding on to that Oculus saying that my board is going to be big enough at the moment, but I think it isn't quite, because Mick is going quite wide at this point and you might die at a moment's notice here. So just discarding the fear of missing out. 7 cards in graveyard, so not quite enough to play this Oculus.
There it is.
Oh, sorry, 6 cards. Yeah, 6 cards in graveyard is exactly enough to play the Oculus. There we go.
Oculus is on the battlefield now. Mick does have some answers. Let's see how he decides to play this out with Destroy Evil in hand, get lost as well.
Yeah, so by playing it this way from Lorenzo, you do get to get 5 counters on your Steam Gold Scholar, and then also have a Helping Hand to get back the Oculus later. But with this get lost at end of turn here, this fish being made, this is I think this is 9 damage showing from Mick and the map tokens. So actually, Mick is just saying, well, I can just just produce this rabbit token here. This is 10 power in play. If I can clear off your Oculus, if I can clear off your Manifest token, that is going to be enough to win the game here and just attack for lethal. So let's see if he has that. Destroy Evil for the Oculus. Is there a way to kill off the Manifold without giving Lorenzo life?
So there is the Destroy Evil on the Oculus.
Get lost on the manifold. Attack for exactly 10. Mick just had it lined up. Lorenzo's big turn just came too late. He was already buried in rabbits and fish and whatever enduring innocence is.
I have to say, I love the way that Mick played this game. Congratulations. Now at 3-0 here in the regional championship with mono white tokens, just so showcasing the diversity right now of standard. Simon, what a match that we had here today.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was great to see one of the Forgotten decks coming back saying, no, the format is not just all red aggro decks. What do you think?
But I was a bit sad because we didn't see Elspeth shine yet, so that's still in my bingo card for this weekend.
Right.
The new Elspeth. But I have to say, congratulations. Jeskai Oculus also a very strong choice here.